More Than Rich podcast. Today we're here with Jeffrey Charles Hardy, a visionary in the fields of global health and community development. Jeffrey is the founder and president of Care for Peace, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering sustainability, peace, and accessible healthcare in underserved communities worldwide. With over 50 years of experience, Jeffrey has been instrumental in creating healthcare facilities across the United States, Africa, South America, and Asia. His work centers around integrating healthcare into community development and ensuring that essential services reach even the most remote areas. One of his most ambitious projects includes a prototype tele-connected health center in a rural village, Myanmar, a model designed for replication across 250 plus communities. Jeffrey is also the author of To Care for Peace, a global mandate to secure the second human evolution in perpetuity, a thought-provoking book that explores the idea of a second human evolution. This concept is Jeffrey's call for humanity to move from a mindset of domination over nature to one of sustainable and peaceful coexistence. Today, we're going to dive into his life work and his vision for peaceful global evolution and what we as individuals can do to contribute. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Joseph. That was a great intro. I don't know what else I can say.
Yeah, pretty excited to get you on here. Just very unique background. I mean, decades of experience in global health with a visionary mission to reshape human evolution. That is unheard of.
Yeah, it feels good. Now the secret is, how do we take that feeling and that thought and move it ahead a little bit? It doesn't have to, this is not pie in the sky stuff. This is stuff we bring to the table.
Yeah,
Our
and
humanity.
I get how just hearing those words can sound overwhelming in itself, right? Like, where do you even begin? So can you get me into the influences of early life? What were some of your formative experiences or influences shaped your path toward healthcare?
I think my most formative was when I was 19 years old, and I signed up for the United States Coast Guard as a hospital corpsman trainee, and I took care of soldiers, of seamen who were coming back from war zones. And I had an amazing feeling that occurred while I was taking care of these guys. It wasn't the same feeling I had towards boys and men when I was in the schoolyard or playground or anything. It was how I felt taking care of guys who were needing my care. And it's a totally different mindset. And the feeling I had at the end of the day was, that was incredible. What was that feeling? And I pinpointed it. I called it peace. But it's because I had been using the word peace to describe that time between wars, or the time after a war, or sitting up on top of a mountain looking down at the people in the valley who were still suffering. That's just not the peace I felt. The peace I felt came from the caring process. And so from that day on, I have had this thought that Care for Peace is real. Every nurse I met all over the world, they automatically understand what Care for Peace is. And us guys in our gut feel we know what killing for peace is too. So it's like, which one are we going to use to move ahead? And I'm a planner. I've been planning global health. I've been global health centers and individual clinics and community development centers. I'm a planner, and a planner is basically a facilitator. It's someone who gets people together and starts from the ground, the basic stuff. Okay, and
Relate to you. Very relatable.
that's what I do, and I really enjoy doing it. And so because of that, while I was building hospitals, I came up with the crazy idea that I could use the same tools that I was using to design hospitals and build hospitals to help design and build the second human evolution.
And you kind of skimmed over the beginning there, but what was that job like? Can you go into detail?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, these guys would come back from war zones on Coast Guard ships. Okay, that's your Delta ships, your ships that would go up rivers that would be watching the shore. And so some of the guys who got close to the land would be getting snake bites. So I had to deal with snake bites. Now, these are not rattlesnakes. These are snakes. The guys told me one kind of snake was called a one-step, and the other snake was the two-step, because if you got bit by the one step, you only could step one step before you die, and the two step, self-explanatory. You could take two steps, and you die. And some guys, not some guy. One guy came back. He'd been not really attacked by an anaconda, but this darn anaconda kind of flopped up on his PT boat, and it's like, oh God, what do we do? And he broke his arm just trying to get the anaconda off his boat. I mean, he didn't get, they're really brown. They're big, thick things,
Slippery.
Gooey. So, yeah, I mean, but these guys were awesome. I mean, and, and on our base, we had some guys drunk as skunks driving out of the Porpoise Club, which is where they got drunk, and then they went across the causeway and they banged into a bar that was a railing, and the bar came and ran into the roof of some kid in the car. So it was pretty, so we had some pretty hairy things as
Interesting,
well.
because I was not expecting that answer. You said a war zone, so I was expecting violence in some aspect.
No, the violence already occurred by the time I got there. That's pretty much the same hopefully the same for most corpsmen and medics in the field. You're not shooting anything. You're trying to help the guys who've been shot.
You never felt like your life was in danger in any of those scenarios? Like, it's not a dangerous job?
Never. I wasn't even close to war zone. Not even close.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Concept of second human evolution. Can you explain it and how you see it necessary for humans' future?
Yeah, I was in a car jam in India and a log jam on my way to Agra, and the taxi was completely stuck, and I was trying to figure out what the heck, what are we going to even get to Agra? I mean, I couldn't even see the pavement outside. There was dust in the air from all the cars and the motorcycles and these big buses that had all sorts of stuff glued onto them. You couldn't even see the original bus because people had, glued everything, shells, toys, you name it. And on top of the bus, you'd have a whole bunch of bags that people were traveling with, and then on top of the bags you'd have people sitting on the bags, and I'm sitting here looking at humanity and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? And that's when I came up with the idea that human evolution has crammed us all into this space, and it's really the end of the first human evolution, and that was mid-60s. Okay, in the mid-60s we had mutually assured destruction. We had all sorts of wonderful things happening with Martin Luther King and what he was saying and doing for civil rights. We had France bringing in existentialism. I mean, I can't list all the amazing things that were happening, plus the Beatles, music, all sorts of things that were happening in the mid-60s. And it was then that I realized, the peace movement really started worldwide in a global movement in the mid-60s, and that's when I realized something is over and something is beginning. First human evolution is over. Now, where are we? We're really in what I'm calling the suspended human evolution, and this is the period of time where we've got to work and think about the detritus that we have been left from the first human evolution, and we have to start thinking of a pre-planning phase, because we have to have the words, the terminology, and the mindset to be able to even get into planning what I'm calling the second human evolution, because the second human evolution has to have global implications. We have to look for a global nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, not just America. And so to get there, we have to practice this, what I'm calling this pre-planning phase. And remember, I'm a planner. I've been planning for 53 years. It's I know I don't look that old because I've been having a lot of fun in my life, and that's what happens when you have a lot of fun. You know, you kind of look younger than you are, right? Go ahead and tell me I look young. Anyway, so the bottom line here is that it's.
When you said 60s, I did not think you lived through that. So that's funny.
Thank you very much. Well, when I look at you, I realize you're carrying the ball to get this whole pre-planning process going. That and that's not that's not a exaggeration, okay? And I'll tell you why. You're not a leader of a country. You're not the head of a big company that has an axe to grind or has to stand up in front of a congressional group and say, no, I absolutely, cigarettes do not hurt anybody. I mean, you're not one of those guys. You're not an international anything, but you are international because your whole podcast process goes to everybody. Well, I mean, where are you right now? Where are you?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Okay, so I'm talking to people in London. I've got a South Africa podcast, and I'm only talking to what I call global podcasts, which are either people who say, oh, there's somebody who can talk about the global situation, and then they get a hold of me, or I search for global podcasters. And believe me, I can't find a lot of them. Most of the people are cooking shows and doing all sorts of I don't know, shows that are for now and whoopee, let's have fun. It's the social media stuff. But I'm a global guest. I'm working on my book, my books. I've started another book. The first book, To Care for Peace, the global mandate to secure the second human evolution, is
Feel
really
free to talk about them a little bit.
well, it's the pre-planning process. Pre-planning, we have to do a bunch of things. First of all, we have to recognize care for peace. It's something right here. We have to recognize that we all have care for peace in our hearts. All you have to do is look at every mother out there, every nurse out there, a lot of teachers, doctors, you name it, people who care for a living, people who know how to listen, people like you who reach out to people. You know how to care for peace. You already do. So that's the first thing you have to have. The second thing you have to have is up here. You've got to be able to stand back and look at the human trajectory from the very beginning, 250 million years ago to the mid 60s, and say, okay, what did we do? What was it? Well, it was killing for peace. It was tribes. It was tribal nations. I mean, that's what we got right now. We got tribal nations. So how do we look at humanity and realize where we are now so that we are capable of thinking, not forget out of the box. We've got to think out of the first human evolution. We got to look at what's happening in the world right now and say, okay, are these wars part of progress or are they part of the first human evolution that we kill instead of care?
That there's an incentive to keep us in this transitional phase to not get us out to the next level.
Ooh, I like the question, and I'm not sure how I'd answer it. I think that the key is we've got it in our mindset. We've got it in our education. We have learned, and the process of learning has given us knowledge. And anybody who's gone through an education system knows that they know more now than they did before. So the key is it's the process. The process is the solution. And that's a quote I put in the very bottom of my book. The process is a solution. It's not the system is the solution, which was a wonderful AT&T commercial. And for what their purpose was, they were absolutely right. their system, telephone, getting us connected and not having, cutouts and things. Yeah, that was a solution, but that's not the solution to moving forward towards the second human evolution. The process is we start with the heart. We start with standing back and looking at humanity and realizing where we were, and that maybe we still have our feet in the first human evolution a little bit, maybe we don't. I feel that we're on this cusp right now where we just have to talk about it so that we can get to the point where we say, no, let's call this the suspended human evolution. And you, Joseph, are the guy who can take these concepts and put them in your own words and flesh them out and start the discussion about the discussion. I mean, it's so simple, it's so basic that if we don't do that, then we'll be saying, well, here's my opinion. I think that this is what we should do. Forget opinions. We've got to start talking about global issues, bring all the problems, and realize that they're all together. They're all stuff that we have to talk about. I mean,
I think if someone can't relate to the whole, using the heart aspect, it's probably just because they haven't been involved in that community aspect of giving back to know what it feels like.
Oh, I like the question. Your answer's in the question. I mean, I think you're right. It's because they haven't been involved. And see, that's your job. You're educating people to what the job is. And I talk to teenagers and kids who are in high school, college, and I'll tell you, they get it. They get the fact that they're the first generation that needs to start the dialogue for successive generations. We've got to do the job that you're talking about. The people who don't know is mostly us. We don't know. We've never used these words before. We've never thought about a global nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We haven't done it. So we got to start now.
That's eye-opening too, if you consider how we're indoctrinated to say that every morning,
Uh-huh. Yep. I pledge
Very
allegiance to the flag
just
of the
mindless.
globe.
It's
Yeah.
a good one. It's a good way to rethink it. Turning points. Was there a defining moment in your career that clarified your commitment to fostering peace through healthcare?
Well, after the Coast Guard, I went and worked in hospitals as the lowest paid clerk. Now, I started as a hospital corpsman in the Coast Guard delivering bedpans. So, I've started from the bottom up. So the next phase was being a clerk in hospitals while I was going to college. And so I I ended up getting picked up by the administrator of the hospital I was working in to start working in hospitals outside the country in Curacao, Netherlands, Antilles, Bahamas, Bahrain, and the Persian Gulf. It was like all of a sudden my girlfriend and then my wife, the same one and the same, even today, went with me. And I worked all over the world helping Kaiser Foundation International in their process of building and designing clinics and hospitals. And the defining moments were when I was with Kaiser Foundation International, working, getting paid $15 an hour, which in those days was like getting $50 an hour. It was incredible. And the people that I was working with lived in straw huts that had television antennas on top of them. They, somebody was sweeping the mud floor. I mean, it's like this sudden dichotomy between human existence, and yet they smiled. They smiled more than most of the people I know in the West smile. I mean, it's fascinating what I have seen, and it's the process of seeing everything and working with everything during this process, working outside the country, that I realized that my observations that were so virgin, so fresh, were forming my belief in what care for peace means. Care for peace, I just felt it. Then I suddenly realized, holy crap, this is something that is bigger than me. And it's not just bigger than me because I felt it and I met those nurses who also felt it. They didn't even know how to describe what it was, but boy, did they you talk to any nurse, and if they care about their job, I'll tell you, they understand care for peace. It's not funny. And then another defining moment was when I was I was working in Nigeria, and I was working for a firm that was working for the governor of River State. And I had a conversation with the governors of River State, home based in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Once again, I got stuck in a traffic jam going to his mansion, which is where we had our meetings, to discuss building a hospital in downtown Port Harcourt. And I'm saying, wait a minute, we don't build a hospital in the middle of Port Harcourt. Let's build outlying clinics so people don't have to drive for so long to get into the heart of the city, hour to go 200 yards. It's just unbelievable. And so I was talking with him, and I says, why don't we build some clinics? And because of the turmoil in Nigeria, there was tribal and ethnic hostilities, and people were bombing other people and killing other people. It was and still is quite a bit of a mess. I said, why don't we take all these professional people who are tribal people and ethnic people and put them all in, maybe 8 people in a small clinic, but they can show what it means to care for peace in a real-time effort, how to take care of people for peace for those people, and then maybe the community will see it. So all of a sudden the word care for peace became attached to what you could do in a caring environment. And then 3 years later, I got called by some people in the government of Myanmar, and I talked to them about, well, why don't we just model care for peace in one little tiny remote village, and let's call our nonprofit organization Care for Peace. Let's build the Community Development and Health Center, and then let's call that a prototype and build 250 more, and all in the name of Care for Peace. So we did, and it was unbelievably a wonderful, beautiful experience. The place is still up and running, even though the government has completely changed. The junta is now in charge, and I can't even go back to Myanmar. But hey, care for peace. Your question was, were there a defining moment? Yeah, but it's more like moments. It was one after the other, and then I wrote a song for the kids in the village to sing during the during the grand opening. Well, I came back to California, and I got some incredible girls who were the advanced treble choir of the Novato School of the Arts. And these girls, 20 of them, were into major a cappella. And so I got up with my ukulele and I played the song I wrote, and then I put it down, gave them the pieces of paper that had all the lyrics on it, and I left. These girls went out and got an arranger. They had an incredible teacher, and they wrote it. And the Care for Peace song is now on YouTube, and it is beyond awesome. It is beyond awesome. I wrote it. When the Grammys for nonprofit organizations who've written songs occurred, I'll get the songwriting award. But those girls get the Song of the Year of the Decade award for what they did with that song, and that was another aha moment for me, because that's when I realized they got it. I wasn't even there.
Wow.
Care for peace, folks. Simple.
I love it. Yeah, you're making me think about just first of all, why can't you go back?
Well, Aung San Suu Kyi, Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of the free world in Myanmar, of democracy in Myanmar. 2011 came. We couldn't even go there until she came in, and an American ambassador came over 4 months before we went over there, and it was through her office that we were invited to come in and talk with them about this idea of a prototype Care for Peace community development and health center. So she was in there. The country for 10 years was becoming an incredible democracy. And then 24 days after Trump's insurrection of the Congress, the military junta decided this is our time, and they went and overthrew the government. So Aung San Suu Kyi, February 1st of 2021, 21 days after the January 6th uprising, they overthrew the government, and Aung San Suu Kyi has been incarcerated ever since. Now she's at least in home arrest. And all the people that we were working with, a lot of them were thrown in jail, and a lot of them weren't. But when that happened, I couldn't even send an email to our friends. It was like all of a sudden I didn't have anything else to do but write a book. That's why I wrote the book. I had thrown my whole life and my heart into that Myanmar project, and it was over. Bye, Jeff. See you later.
How does that feel? Take me through it. Like, what are your emotions going through this as you're
Oh,
realizing,
well, I mean, it's just like this recent election. My heart falls through my chest and ends up somewhere in the floor where all the blood is. And then, 24 hours later, I pick up my heart, put it back in my chest, and my brain takes over. So, and that's what happened yesterday. After the election, I felt really bad. And then, I said, okay, come on, let's brain kick in. So my brain kicked in. And that's what happened with the Myanmar project. I was devastated, absolutely devastated. My heart was on the floor. But then I picked my heart up and said, okay, what are you going to do, Jeff? You can't even follow up on all your plans that you had, 12-hour days, which included communications and emails and writing uh, proposals and all sorts of stuff for this project that was ready to be exploded into 250 more community development health center. I mean, the idea of Care for Peace was not just care for the health care, but it also included education, infrastructure, business development, community development. And so that's why we called it a community development and health center. So it's like all of a sudden, now what? And so I put my brain on, I said, write a book.
So
So
if you had to scale it today, what would you need to do that?
scale, what do you mean,
Like
as
like to,
in?
to different countries to recreate the concept to be pushing it worldwide.
That's it's an interesting question because I think that every country would have to be different. One of the things that I learned way before I started uh, doing this nonprofit stuff was I had my own company. I ended up selling it to a Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
And believe me, I made more mistakes than anybody else when it comes to designing anything. As a facilitator, as a planner, I've not listened, or I listened to the wrong thing, or I got way too far ahead of myself. All sorts of stuff. I've made more mistakes than anybody. So when I went to Myanmar, I said to myself, I'm not going to make the same mistakes. Well, what do you know? I didn't. It was great. I didn't make the same mistakes. I made new mistakes. I made different ones. But bottom line is you have to start from fresh. Start fresh with any new project. I have reached out to two Central American countries, but have been told by uh, two of our partner universities, University of Virginia and University School of Law, Berkeley, that I shouldn't be going until there was uh, some something at the government level that proved that I wasn't going to have to deal with
Yeah.
the corruption and stuff. So, I'd like to go to Ukraine when they get to the point where they need to rebuild. But I wouldn't rebuild a community development health center. I'd go there and I'd ask them,
What do
"Hey,
you need?
what exactly? What do you need?" And I'd start with
I
that.
love it,
Well,
dude.
you
I
know,
relate to you so much right now because my urban development work that I work on and do, I tailor for different cities. I research their needs, I consolidate the ideas, and then I try to feasibly, pragmatically combine them and consolidate them into one idea.
nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, so
That's
I'm
awesome.
sure there's some way we could work together, honestly, in the future, because my
Good.
nonprofit work is all urban development. So that's why I was super intrigued to have you
Oh,
on. I'm like, you don't even know how similar our work is, you know?
well, every urban development, I get heavily involved in urban development, um, and suburban development and rural development. I mean, I
Hmm.
get heavily involved in those three phases and how one can help the other.
Yep.
And when I went to Myanmar, they wanted me to build a hospital. It was another like Nigeria, and I said, "You don't need another hospital. You need rural health care." And what they're looking at now is we set up a televideo system at the rural health center so that they can now communicate to the urban, to
Wow.
the university
Smart.
medical center.
That is
And
smart.
so, there's a urban development, rural development process
And
that
what's so amazing about this is the fact that you're just giving people access to things we already have here. It's nothing really new, but you're just recreating it.
yes, yes, and we're helping them with the process. Remember, the process is the solution, and that's what you are. You're a process guy. So, you, you, you help them create what it is that they already have thought about. They've already
Yeah.
got it in their heart. They have to describe it to you.
Yes, exactly. And then the other part is okay, now how do we get the resources to make it happen, right? That's comes last. So yeah, I super
Right.
relatable on this. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Me
Global
too.
patterns in healthcare. What common patterns have you observed across different cultures in their approach to healthcare and community well-being?
I think uh, I, it's funny when you ask a question immediately. What's the first thought that comes into my mind was traditional medicine, because when I'm
Mm.
in these countries where I'm going sometimes for the first time representing a white guy, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
and
Good point.
and I was told in Myanmar I have to wear a business suit, and I say why? Because they've never seen anybody in a business suit before. I say,
Wow.
well, I say,
Wow.
well, why don't I wear a clown suit, and it's,
Same
but
thing.
it's like what I see was traditional medicine. I've got some photographs, some wonderful photographs of a man playing a drum, another woman dancing, and the sick woman sitting up on her cot in her straw hut where there's a cot elevated so that the snakes and things don't get to her. And they were dancing, they were doing this wonderful, wonderful tribal dance. And it was part of the traditional medicine. And as I was taking a photograph, some of my people were with me, but two women were there wearing the traditional nurses' uniforms, which are reddish skirts and white blouses and white nurses' hats. They still wear those nurses' hats, the way, the like that came
Traditional.
from the monastic type thing. But with those two women were two other women who were traditional healers. And there was an unbelievable communication between them. It wasn't like the traditional healers were just doing traditional medicine. They were learning from the more modern medicine women. And it wasn't the modern medicine, with x ray machines and things. It was modern women, with actual tourniquets and actual cotton balls and some of the others, and the knowledge for mostly delivering babies and dealing with uh, women who hemorrhage and you name it. But and they were learning, the two women who were more modern, they were learning more from the traditional healers than the traditional healers were learning from us. Ah, you know?
And there's more natural knowledge of the earth and the planet than there is, to be made up to come up with the remedies for everything. It's already here.
Absolutely. No, yeah, you're dead on. It's and everywhere I go, I figure that I've been successful if I've learned more from them than they ever learned from me. Because basically, what they're learning from me is like what you said. We're just bringing the tools. I mean, we're just giving them the access, and
Right.
so
It's not like a new form of energy or something, right?
no, it
Yeah.
isn't. In fact, they've got to use their existing energy to do it, not us. And the big proof in the pudding for us was when the military junta, overthrew Aung San Suu Kyi and all our friends in the union government, the local government, everywhere, and I couldn't even go back. And now, what, 1 year later, I still hear that our clinic is doing great. They've built a
Wow.
pond. They've built a pond. And you say, wow, a pond for the water? Well, yeah, that's for the water, but it's also, they've got these floating containers that are growing crabs.
Wow.
What? Crabs? What for? They're feeding the livestock with the
Oh,
crabs. They never had
interesting.
livestock before. Now they have livestock and they have crabs being grown in this
That's
pond.
hilarious.
It's just
So
great,
just indirect, inadvertent benefits over time that they've been able to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even probably, most of the people there don't
That's
even know who I am.
wild. Well, yeah, and what's cool
Yeah,
is like you're giving them time to think about other things, right? Like when you're focused
yeah.
on your basic necessities, think about how many third world countries can't get an education just because they don't have hygiene products, right? Like
Oh boy.
women staying home because they're embarrassed
Yeah.
to have to go bleed out in front of people. Can you imagine that?
Oh, that just popped into my mind. The woman who is, I'm trying to think, she's leaving the Fistula Hospital project in Africa, and these girls have been raped in different places. I don't want to go into this
Yeah, yeah.
deeply, but the fistula problem that causes these girls to break and hemorrhage in the lining between vagina and anal area, and all of a sudden the smell is so overpowering that the women, the children walk away from it. And
Well,
it's so ugly, and I've seen some of that in other countries, in Thailand and in Myanmar, and I saw it once in Curacao. I mean, this is not something that is just in Africa; it's something that's happening all over the world. And so, what do you do about that? What do you?
here's here's what I think that we're supposed to do, and you can tell me if we're wrong. So I was trying to work on this urban development project in Tanzania, but the main idea is to help them grow their own food instead of having to import resources from
Oh,
other countries. Is
yeah.
that mainly the solution that third world countries need, like to empower themselves, to be able to do things for themselves? Is that the main idea?
I don't know if it's part of the main idea. It's kind of like those food chain things that show you that you have to have so much vegetables, so much
Yeah.
protein, starch, you name it. That's one aspect, but all the preventive health, that has to be one aspect, because it's one thing if they're growing their own food, which I saw in one village. They were doing a darn good job growing their own food. In fact, I went there to learn from them. They had built a huge fish pond around the periphery of their fields,
Mhm.
because the fish emulsion is what they use to fertilize their fields, and then they could eat some of the fish, and then they could eat some of the vegetables. That was great. There's only one problem. That whole area had a problem. They didn't have latrines. So people, including me, would have to go out into the woods and find somewhere where someone had not defecated. And you gotta have a whole preventive health process. You've got to
Wow,
have,
that's a good point. That's a
you have to
good
have
point.
all that point. But you're right. That's absolutely one of the categories that has to be addressed.
Like you don't even think though that it's really a health problem to go poop somewhere, but over time, if everybody's doing that, and it adds up, I'm sure there is some kind of disease or something to worry about. Am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. Here's a story for you, a visual. I hate for this visual. I was walking around in one little village in Myanmar, and there was a little girl sitting in what looked like grass, a lawn, but not really a lawn, more just like grass that was tall. It's about that tall. And this little girl was old enough to sit up on her own. That's it. A week before, she probably wasn't, but she was sitting there and she was going like this. Well, I asked Lachi, my buddy, who was a Burmese American, to what's she doing? And he says, "Oh, she's eating grubs." I said, "Eating grubs?" Yeah, actually, it's not really grubs. They're probably something else like, bed bugs or something like that, but they eat it. And I said,
Wow.
well, tell me more about that. He says, well, just don't walk in that area because she's getting the grubs from the poop.
I knew that was gonna. I knew you were gonna say that. That's horrible. That's
Just,
crazy. Yeah. What are you gonna do though? You're starving, right?
well, yeah, you're starving, and so you put your kid in the middle of the grass so that she can eat another day. I got more stories like that than I have time, and you have time, and that anybody in the world has time for. But I've led a absolutely wonderful life, learning every single step of the way.
Man, that's pretty eye-opening though. Human connection and peace. How does our level of human connection impact our ability to create sustainable peace on a global scale?
Oh, care for peace. It's so simple. I mean,
Yeah.
forgive me for not having a great answer to that, but our connection,
Yeah.
if we care, we can communicate. If we don't care, we cannot communicate. Huh?
So true. That's crazy. And the outreach speaks volumes too, right? Like, how many people are you trying to contact? Are you really trying to fix this problem,
Yeah, these are not problems that I'm not really focused as much on the problems as I'm focused on the process. I'm a process guy. You're a process guy. We say, okay, I'll help. Okay, now what's the first thing you do? Well, you establish a process.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
real simple. This isn't Buddhism. This isn't Christian. This is the step-by-step process to do whatever it is that you have to do. And it's interesting. The process is a solution for just about everything. If you're going to raise children, there's a process of raising children. you know, uh, a raised child is the solution, but you got to have a process as the solution to get way out there.
Yeah.
It's the result.
Challenges of building peace. What recurring obstacles do you encounter in global peace initiatives and how do you overcome them?
I think the biggest problem we will always have is leadership. And I, I've spent lots of time since this election results came in, reading the articles actually from New York Times and from the Atlantic, New Yorker, CNN, listening to some of the positive things that we could look forward to with this new leadership. So it's like one of the things that just kind of grabbed my attention is that Trump gave Putin some COVID test kits. And what I heard when he did that was, oh, what an evil man Trump was. And I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, that was a really decent thing to do. That was a human thing to do. And maybe if we want to deal on a human level to keep us from pushing the red buttons on our leaders' desks and blow everybody up, maybe we got to take the human approach that Trump did. And it's like those are the little things that I think that we have to do. We have to look at our leaders and honor them for the good things they do and hope that they get it into their heads that, oh yeah, I did a good thing. And then then keep doing things like that. That's how we help our leaders. We have to give them the trust that comes from being a human that must trust our leaders.
It also made me think of how many people were just completely split on being closed-minded to not even entertaining the other side. And that comes back to listening, right? Like, if you really wanted people to join your side, you would listen to them. What do they have to say? Why are they rationalizing that position? Should I do some research of my own? But no, so many people already had their mind made up. And it's one of those things where you hate the messenger. So the thing I was saying was that oftentimes I'm noticing people hate the messenger as opposed to the message itself, right? Like, I don't want to use Trump as an example, but had somebody else spoken the same way, do you think people would interpret it differently? Like if it was a woman taking these stances?
We have a rule in the consulting world, and that is that you have to be the seventh person who suggests something, because it takes 6 people before you. The first couple are, forget that. Then a few after that, well, maybe he has something, but I'm not going to think about it right now. And then a few more, it's like, well, maybe we'll think about that. And then I come along as the 7th person, and people listen. So
sounds like the entertainment industry.
there you go. And, when it comes to the Trump thing, I mean, I'm starting to try to assess what just happened in America, and what happened with Trump being given the carte blanche. And so I think I'm at the 7th time that people have told me that Trump just might, be the best president. So I haven't gotten there yet, but I am definitely at the point where I need to look at where my thinking was and where it needs to go for the next at least 4 years.
Do you know who Susie Wiles is? Did you see Trump chose her as the chief press secretary?
Never heard of her before. Never saw her before.
Or no, chief of staff. Sorry.
Yeah, the chief of staff. I never even don't know. Do you?
No, that's why I was like, are people going to be happy or bad?
I don't know. I mean, if you're preconditioned to be happy, you'll be happy. If you're preconditioned to be sad, this is your attitude. I mean, attitudes are the predetermination of how you're going to feel about something. So, yeah,
gosh,
I'm not predetermined. I try to stand back and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I find myself a lot more conservative these days, but people tell me that I'm not. So it's weird that other people are telling me my stance when I'm telling them how I feel,
I'm conservative, but I'm also a progressive. I want to see the world progress. I want to see civilization progress. And
in a pragmatic way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to let us progress, and that's where I'm at.
Why is empathy crucial in your work, and how can it be cultivated to support peace in healthcare?
A lovely question. I mean, empathy. Isn't empathy what you add to the feeling of care and the action of care that really touches the people that you wish to touch and have touch you? So I always think of empathy as a two-way street. It's not just something that I feel. It's something that I seek. I seek people to empathize with me. And so to do that, you've got to have hearts that connect with hearts and heads that connect with heads, and values, attitudes, and goals to connect with other people's values, attitudes, and goals.
Were you ever an avid meditator?
I think life is a meditation when at least for me anyway, I allow philosophy to be part of life. It's not something that you go and you learn and then you practice it. Philosophy is part of life. And I think that meditation also is part of life. I think that thinking about the moment is part of life. And it's when someone says, think before you speak, Yeah, but think before everything else. Think before you think. It's like, back up. And the meditation is also a spiritual feeling that if you have it inside your heart, then you're going to be capable of feeling the moment now. And so I look at meditation as something that I do all the time. And it's part of what evolves in the feeling of peace. It's the thing that occurs when you're not angry about something, that you accept it. You're not totally surprised about something. You're surprised, but you're prepared for surprise, and it's hard to be prepared for surprise. But meditation and peace allows you a little bit more time in instant moments to be prepared.
That's interesting. I'm just trying to think of how Western societies kind of evolved that, right? Like maybe we've just adopted this way of, we still control our breathing, right? But it's not maybe in the pretzel style, closing our eyes all the time. Yeah.
That's good. I agree. Yeah. That's part of sitting up on the hill and looking down into the valley where the people are suffering. I mean, the idea of meditation to distance yourself is not my idea of meditation. My idea of meditation is to connect with the moment.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And it's not just a little candle that's there that you're looking at, or something that you're focusing on. It's everything that you're focusing on. It's life. It's this moment, right? And if you ever talk with anybody who's gone through a heart attack, they will tell you about that moment when they have a heart attack. And then afterwards, if you talk to them, because they're still alive, hopefully, they'll tell you that something changed. And you know what changed? It's their ability to really grasp the moment that is coming the next second.
I honestly ask people all the time, whenever they say they do meditate, I'm like, well, what are you thinking of? Like, are you thinking of yourself? Are you thinking of others? And the main reason I ask that is because when I've studied Native Americans, they say that people always forget to pray for the earth.
Oh. See, I agree with that. Now, what does that have to do with your answer? What was
the meditation aspect of like looking down from above when you were saying that, that just kind of made me tie into that. Like, well, what are you looking at when you're looking down? Are you looking down at people? Are you trying to lift yourself up? Are you hoping that the earth can recover? Like, where are your thoughts going in my head?
That's cool. That's interesting, because I just had a conversation with a very spiritual woman who was fascinated by a friend of hers who's very Christian, who prays with people, who says, okay, let's pray for that. And she doesn't feel good about it, because she's basically, not basically, she's atheistic. She doesn't believe in any religion. She's never read any biblical
it feels
stuff
like it's
or anything like that.
No purpose, kind of feels like.
Yeah, exactly. And I says, well, isn't the feeling that you have when you're praying a wonderful feeling? Can we get back to the root of what it is that you're praying with? It's not about, it's with. What are we using to pray with? And that's, once again, this is part of the meditation thing. It's get back to the place where you're touching the instant before you're feeling, the instant before the heart attack, the instant before you're thinking. That's where we need to be, the ability to meditate in now.
Do you have any theories on maybe what has disconnected us from, being able to tap into that emotion or feel it?
I don't know. You have to be connected first before you get disconnected. I don't think anybody who is connected to that gets disconnected.
Ooh. That's a good one. I like it.
I don't know.
Patterns in community resilience. What common traits or patterns make communities more resilient in the face of challenges?
That's a difficult question, because my idea of resilience is mostly what it is that is in this ether that we're listening to collectively, and that's the community part, where we can hear something together and understand something together, and that's a visceral thing. That's really not as much a knowledge thing. It's like, oh yeah, yeah,
Coherence.
and, yeah, coherent, as in it's not something that you've talked about and gotten there. It's something that it's there, and oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Interesting. I think that makes sense. Impact of cultural differences. How do cultural beliefs and practices influence your approach to healthcare and peace building?
Cultural beliefs. Cultural beliefs. Cultural. I wouldn't call it beliefs. I would call it rituals. I would look at not this. Yeah, your question is appropriate. Once again, I have to back up and I say, okay, how do we express our beliefs? Well, we express our beliefs culturally, meaning together, with rituals. And that's pray together, huh? That's go to church together.
Divination.
It's good word. It's the ability to stand back and look at something together and have those moments that you just understand something together. That's a culture. Now, definition of a culture, in my opinion, is a society wherein everyone responds alike. Very important, because responding is part of ritual. Responding where, when I was working in Bahrain and the Persian Gulf for 1 year for Kaiser Foundation International, some of the direct bosses that I worked with were Muslims. And they had their prayer rugs, and they'd throw their prayer rugs out on the wall. They roll them out, not throw them. They roll them out, and then they get down on their knees, and their foreheads would touch the carpet,
To the
they
east.
would start praying. And they were in the east, so I don't know which way they were pointing. So, your east is different than my east, but no, it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to watch, and when I was in a meeting and all of a sudden they'd roll out the prayer carpets, I would not leave. I stayed and watched and felt whatever it was that they were expressing in my own spirit. I felt it. And it was a wonderful feeling. And my wife and I were in Chartres Cathedral one time when we were in France, and that's outside Paris. And I always go into a church or a cathedral, and I always find somewhere to sit down and just absorb. And that's my ritual. That's my ritual, my connection to cultural belief on a grand scale, because cultural belief on a grand scale doesn't matter what your language is, doesn't matter how you're feeling the hidden words, the unspeakable words, the feeling words, the care words, the peace words that all of us have in one way or the other. Even the atheists that I know and the agnostics that I know, we all have our rituals and our feelings of belief that is cultural, because we're doing it together and we are responding alike, even if it's not in the same language.
And yeah, you're bringing my point that I was thinking of, that we don't speak the same language, but the religion can be universal. So the culture can still vary, right? Like you may have different setups, a different type of cathedral, which still keeps you interested, right? Like you're like, what does this place look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
No, I like that. I like that. And sure, I mean, you look at what was it, the Second Vatican, where it was approved to have the services in languages other than Latin. And I'm thinking, well, it doesn't really matter. I don't think anyway, but Latin was something that was ubiquitous among all Roman Catholic churches. And so to allow other languages, it's the same thing. It's no big radical difference, except maybe that way it communicates better to the the members of the church, the people who go to churches. Maybe it communicates better. Maybe it was a good idea. I don't know. I'm not a Roman Catholic, so I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's that language that we all always first feel. We have to feel that language first, and then we put it into words.
when it comes to shaping a vision for wealth beyond money, what does true wealth mean to you in the context of peace, purpose, and the second human evolution?
Love that question. You've been thinking about these questions. Thank you. That's gorgeous. Wealth to me, I mean, that Beatles song, what is it?
I like it.
All the good things in life are free, except the birds and the bees. That's what I like. It's like, wealth of spirit is much, much better. I guess my favorite story of having worked for 4 months as a ski instructor in Switzerland for children.
Wow.
Children's
I did not
ski
expect
instructors.
that one.
No, it was wonderful. It was right after college, and it was an accident. It was wonderful, and I just had a wonderful feeling at time teaching these kids how to ski. But the thing that where was I going with this? What were we talking about? You got
the context of true wealth.
Oh yeah. On my breaks, I'd just ski with the Swiss or with the filthy rich Brits and Russians and all the people who came to this exclusive British ski resort, Alzire, Sursion, in the Valais portion of
Super
Switzerland.
fancy.
It was unbelievable. It was literally an exclusive British ski resort.
A world class kind of attraction.
Oh, it was whatever you add. I don't know. The King of Spain came. I saw Mick Jagger ski and, a bunch of other these people skiing. And, man, nobody skied better than me. I was pretty good. Anyway, but what was interesting is all these people skied with this serious look on their faces. And when I was at lunch on top of this deck restaurant, above the tree line, looking at all the Alps on the other side, just unbelievable. It was like people were so serious. And I was thinking, these people are so filthy rich. Why aren't they happier?
That's a good point.
So wealth to me is the wonderful feeling I had with those kids on the ski slope. They had such a wonderful time. And when I taught these little kids how to ski, I wasn't teaching them anything. I was basically saying, hey, kids, you go this way. And then when you get to the other side of the piste, you say, hup, and you jump and you lift your skis up in the air and you
go the other way.
Around in the middle air and they go the other way. And these kids knew how to ski by the time they got to the bottom of the first hill. Okay. Wow. They had such a good time, and the wealth of love that was there, the wealth of knowledge of what you need to know was there. That's what I think of when it comes to wealth. And of course, care is something that is right there in your heart, and you don't have to have money to care. And the poor people that I've seen in the world, like especially in Myanmar, when I saw the poorest people in the world who'd never seen a car before, happy as happiness could be. Oh, handing me a baby here. Because here I was in my business suit, the white guy from somewhere in the, it was really weird. And they'd hand me a baby like I was supposed to kiss the baby, which I remember seeing Arlo Guthrie behind the stage one time when I was on the stage when Arlo and Linda Ronstadt finished singing, and the big sliding door opened for his equipment truck to come and pick everything up. And these women were standing outside holding their babies saying, Arlo, kiss my baby,
Come
kiss
bless
my
him.
baby. And so, all of a sudden, these wonderful women who couldn't speak a word of English in Myanmar, which, by the way, Myanmar is right there on the map, just for anybody who doesn't know. That's it right there. Hold my baby. They weren't asking me to kiss the baby. I don't know. Maybe they were. They were speaking in a completely foreign language, but I was holding these wonderful baby, the wealth of love that was just right there that they were sharing with me and that I was sharing with them. That's wealth to me. Oh my God. I feel wealth all the time. I was exercising in a swimming pool before you and I talk here. And, I have a wealth of love with those people who exercise with me. It's just, wealth is everywhere. Oh, gosh. And there's not a transaction with money at all.
I love it. Super good answer. The only joke that I had that came to mind was the South Park episode where they do the pizza and French fries, where he's teaching him how to ski. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's worth taking a look. It's funny. As a ski instructor, you might relate to that.
Well, now you got to tell me, or I got to go look at it. Look for it.
Basically, you do the pizza or French fries. Pizza, French fries.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, right. The stem Christi, as it were. Yes,
Hilarious.
I remember. Well, I never learned how to do the stem Christi because I was trained by someone who said, "Don't learn the stem Christi. Just put your skis side by side and follow me and après-moi, as it were." But that was in California when I learned how to ski, and I never learned how to do stem Christi.
Man, and I think that goes to speak for people that are usually classically trained in things. They're a lot more uptight about their skill, but when you learn something in a lot more a looser term without rules, it seems to stick more. People are more agile with their abilities in a sense.
I like that. Absolutely. And that's been my experience too. It's what these kids skiing, and the thing about those children that I was teaching was, and by the way, the Swiss are not allowed to have anyone other than the Swiss
I didn't know that.
teach ski. And the only reason why I was teaching this children skiing is because none of the Swiss wanted to teach children because the children don't tip. Well, the minute all the adults, all the parents found out that there was an American teaching kids how to ski, and they'd come up and ask me, and the word got out around that the only reason why I was there was because I was an American. I don't, it's kids, they don't tip. All of a sudden, I got envelopes of money, cash, underneath my door.
Wow.
It was great. People actually hand me money. It was like, okay, that's great. I'm just a college kid.
Man,
I'll take any money.
What does that speak to, though, for these misconceptions of people who think it's not worth my time, and then you don't even know what you're missing out on,
Yeah, but I'm the biggest misconception I know. So I exist as a misconception. I mean,
I relate. I relate so hard to that one. Lessons from crisis. What did work in Myanmar during times of conflict teach you about human nature and resilience?
Oh, that's the only thing I can think are the dark stories, the sad stuff that I heard about, the troops taking out a bunch of Muslims and into a field and shooting them, just like The Great Escape, where the end scene. I hope spoiler warning. Where and the horrific stuff that happened during the Holocaust that wasn't in gas chambers, where they just take villages of people and just line them up and shoot them. That was happening when I was there.
Wow.
And so it's very difficult for me to not look at my situation and fantasize that my situation, because it's so wonderful, that there isn't something elsewhere that is balancing out with horror. When I first landed in Chakyu, which is the name of the town that the airplane from Rangoon, the main international airport in Myanmar, the airplane would fly from Yangon to Chakyu. We get out of the airplane and we're getting in a taxi, and we drive by this whole area that had been completely burned. Well, it's because the people who had lived there were Muslim communities that had been killed. Just think of that. You're driving from an airport, and here's a whole area that's burned out because the people
just massacred.
And these are Buddhist people who killed a whole ton of people in the village. They throw, I mean, their houses are made out of straw. So when one goes up, they all go up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And so, I had to balance out that I was there to bring some tools for the methodology to meet their needs. But there was all sorts of horror going on at the same time.
And I know you said that you didn't feel like you were ever in danger, but that never crossed your mind, like that if you were spotted, you looked different, you could be a target, nothing like that? You never had fear like that?
No, because there's a part of me that's extremely naive, and then there's another part of me that reminds myself that I have wonderful people that I'm with at the same time, because when that airplane flew from Rangoon to Chakyu, there were about 8 other people who were part of my local and national team. There were people from the union government, people from the state government. There were people especially from the doctor partner organization that started this whole thing with us, the People's Health Foundation, headed by a man named Dr. Dan Singh, a wonderful man. And so I had all these people, all of them speaking Burmese, who were around me and helping. And so I had a very secure feeling.
How long were they like reaching out or needing help until you were able to actually get there and do something about it?
I don't think they were reaching out to help.
Wow.
I think that when I went there, it was, okay, that's a good idea. Instead of building a hospital, right here in Rangoon, where they already have tons of hospitals, let's help people in the rural. Okay, that's a good idea. And remember, the people in the city weren't doing that well either. I mean,
wow.
they weren't doing that well as the people in the rural, but the fact is they had hospitals and they had clinics and they had universities that were teaching doctors. They had a wealth of great people who were the nurses, the midwives, you name it, in the big cities. It's just that in the rural areas, they didn't have that. So when I went and said, hey, let's do rural health, all of a sudden, it wasn't a big aha. I mean, the government said, yeah, we really do need rural health. And they had problems with the 14 different tribal regions, the states in Myanmar at that time, and had been for many years. So it wasn't that difficult to be part of the extension of their aha moment,
What mindset shifts do you believe are necessary for humans or humanity to embrace this new phase of evolution?
I think that I'm going to go right back to you, because what you're in charge of the answer to that question, because we have to share other mindsets. Other people have to see other mindsets so that they start thinking about, well, okay, that's cool. I've had to change my mindset in the last 72 hours since the election here in America, because I'm looking at this mindset that are all these people who voted for Trump, these are not evil people. These are not horrible people. These are not just pickup trucks with flags flying from them for Trump. I mean, these are 71 or 82 million people. And so I have had to look at that mindset and say, what is that that's different? And so the answer to your question is the process is a solution, and you, Joseph, are in charge of making sure that everyone gets a chance to join in on that process that we all share, but also come up with their own process and their own solutions so that they have a mindset that they're comfortable with.
I don't want to throw my family under the bus, but you'd be surprised how much hate that I've been receiving just because I support an RFK or an Elon or a Tulsi. And because they support Trump, my family interprets them as evil. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can't imagine how many other people think that way as well if my own family thinks like that.
Yeah, and how do we deal with our opinions? How do we deal with other people's opinions? How do we take ourselves away from or back up from the issues and just discuss the issues? And I think that just by asking questions and allowing ourselves to push the assumptions aside, and that is very difficult. Using words like evil is something that I run into all the time.
Because it's not that black and white.
It's not, exactly. And my example of, Trump giving all this COVID testing and other equipment to Putin is an example of what a good person can do for another person to keep him from pushing the atom bomb button on his desk. I mean, there's good everywhere. I'm not saying there's good people everywhere. That was Trump said that. What I say is there's good everywhere.
And what bugs me is people would interpret you as, a villain or being on the other side just for stating that, just for saying like, oh, you think, wow, Putin could be a good person? How are you brainwashed? That's what gets me going, because I'm like, I'm so neutral on everything. And my lineage goes back to Spain, right? So I always think about how Spain was neutral in their wars, and I like to reference that, of what my own real original country, how they would feel about this,
Right. Until Guernica. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Ruined it.
No. I mean, Franco people, a lot of people didn't go back to Spain after the war because they hated Franco, and for what he did in Guernica to say Hitler, hey, okay, I'll do this, and yet in a lot of ways, he saved the whole country from getting bombed up. So,
it's kind of hard.
Have to, but here's where what you're doing can help move the discussion along. And so when people are saying, you're evil, or that what you're saying is wrong, you have to compartmentalize that as an opinion. That's what you are saying. How have you come to that conclusion is a difficult question to ask because you're forcing the word conclusion on them. So you have to ask the question in a different way.
Gosh, it's true. And if they don't have the answer, that's when they get defensive.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to say, well, let's look at this. I was just talking to a guy, and it doesn't matter if you're telling the truth or not. Come up with another option and say, well, what do you think of this? Get them talking. Get them moving ahead. I talk to Trumpers all the time in the swimming pool where I exercise. I mean, these are diehard Trumpers. And even today, I started talking with them again by saying, well, what did you think? What do you think? I said, and they know that I'm objective. They know that I well, I'm subjective, objective.
Yeah, but you're looking for more information. You're right. Like you want to make the best decision. You want to see what everyone else thinks, so you can come to your own consensus.
Yeah. So when I hear the answer, I say, "Wow, that's interesting." Always wow, that interesting. Always wow, that's interesting, because then you validate whatever it was they said, and then you go to the next question. And wow, let me think about that. Well, what about what a friend of mine said?
Have you ever had to convince people that the legacy media is irrelevant?
Oh, I don't try to convince people of anything.
I got you. Well, just that one, like for family members, I'm like, why are you guys trusting these sources and telling me these things when don't you look at who owns these things? That's what makes me upset. They don't go backwards.
But you're saying don't you trust it? You got to take that question out of your opinion. Mm-hmm. And, why do you trust those sources? What you have to do is take the issue that those sources are talking about and then put that issue there.
That's a good point.
Okay, the thing about Kennedy, the guy who's going to be in charge of health on the
FDA.
Trump thing, is that he says that he's going to really finally deal with this Obamacare thing. So how can we take the Obamacare and keep what might be working and add what might be better? Get that discussion going.
Right. Don't just demonize them because they're going to do something that you don't know. Like, yeah.
Put the issue out there, pull the opinions back, and you would be surprised how much your questions are based on your opinions or established opinions. So, gotta get your opinions out of there.
Got you.
Before you work on the issue. What are the issues? And even asking that question, I don't think works. I think you have to put the issue out there. Because if you ask somebody who's opinionated, what are the issues, you aren't going to get an answer because they're so far away from the issues, probably, possibly, maybe, that, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings here. If anybody watches your podcast here, let's find out what Jeffrey C. Hardy said to Joseph. So I think that for me, it's my responsibility to put the issue out there. And then my goal is very simple, to break the issue into options. Because if you can take whatever it was that they brought in as their opinion, create an issue, and use what their opinion was as one option, then, I talked to somebody else who said this, then you're bringing that second option in that allows it to be compared or work with that first option. And then you can get the people you're talking with to discuss, I don't agree with what that guy said. I'm glad, and then you're saying, boy, glad I lied about that. I don't know who that guy is. Yeah, well, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, he's a bunch of boneheads. Another buddy of mine said.
And the funny part too is, as I'm studying government, you'd be surprised how many people tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm like, gosh, all right, I'm just gonna back off then. I'm just constantly told I don't know anything when I'm studying this,
but you see, that's your how. That's your how, and you will develop your how with these people so that instead of them saying you don't know what you're talking about, you could get to them to the point where they agree that, it's really difficult to talk about this because I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about because there's so many issues out there. Huh? There's nothing better than false humility to help somebody who is also not, or should I say, who is not humble, and not moving ahead in the discussion.
I agree. And people often just tell me that I put things into words that they can't, describe or say or couldn't have formulated. But I'm also the first person to tell you that I don't know everything. I could be wrong. That's what drives me nuts, is like, I'm not absolute about anything.
Right. And so what I do is I like that expression because that's something that helps us let people know that our false humility is right there close to the top. Meaning, we're still listening.
Meaning our minds could be changed, right?
Yes, exactly. No, it's a good, but the more I get involved in these discussions, and I'm thinking about some of the discussions I've had with high government level people who are not only bringing their opinion, but they're also bringing government policy into the discussion. Very, very important. So I can't say I'm ignorant. What I can do is reach out and get more knowledge into my context, my sensorium, this thing we call my brain, my sensorium, which takes in all the touch, feel, smell, seeing, and all as the knowledge comes in, and get more of that. And as you get more information from these people, the more you'll realize where they're coming from. So, and that also gets you an idea of what their hot buttons are, where in some places where I don't want to go. So when I was in Myanmar, I made sure I didn't say anything about the Muslims, although I was in a meeting one time with the Special Economic Zone. I don't know, he was a guru. He was a government guy, and we met in a government building with government chairs and fancy stuff and everything around. And he wanted to know if I was going to take care of the Muslims that were coming to our clinic. And I said, okay, our policy, Care for Peace policy, is to serve everyone. And that's what I use when I convince the people at the union government, his boss, that we would do, and it was approved, that we would serve everyone. Well, that basically put him on notice, So I didn't have to say, darn right, I'm going to serve the Muslims.
Wow.
But sometimes you have to use your political wiles.
That's interesting, though, because, you're doing everything in the best interest, right? Trying to accommodate everybody. And then you're still worried about stepping on toes.
Oh, yeah, you better believe it. And I was talking to the ambassador, inviting the United States ambassador, Derek Mitchell, wonderful, wonderful man, and he had a wonderful office in the American Embassy in Yangon. And I was having a meeting with him about our upcoming grand opening of this clinic, this community development health center. And I said, come on, fly in, use one of the Bell helicopters and fly in, because, to get him to hop in an airplane and then take the boat for 3.5 hours and then hike for 1.5 hours, he wasn't going to do that. So I even suggested that he take a Bell one of the helicopters that are available to him, and come to the village and be at the grand opening. And he said, I can't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, because a village in Rakhine State, which is the state in which we had built this clinic, some of the Buddhists had burnt down a mosque. And he said, I can't congratulate them. I can't support that type of behavior. And, boy, I can totally relate to his feelings, because I made a deal with the government that we would serve everybody, and here we are in the same state. And so, needless to say, he did not come to the grand opening.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. One of the things that I was thinking about was, I bring this up often, that Plato believed those government positions should have been for free. Like, you're serving the community. You're not getting paid for those jobs. Back in the, philosopher king days. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, everything's changed since then.
But do you think that keeps people true to their actual positions, though? Like they're doing it because they want to do it when wealth and money isn't involved?
I am so not the person to ask that question, because I think that, there's a macro answer probably, which is everybody is doing their own thing, and then there's a micro answer per person, and that's, well, everybody's doing their own thing, and it depends on the person. I always wonder if all those people who were Republicans, Trump has something on them. No, it's like, how could they get to there? How can someone say, oh, it was stolen? The election was stolen. I never could figure out how someone could stand up with a straight face and say that, and then proceed to run, for another election when what? Well, if you think it's stolen, how can you run for, another office?
Yeah.
Is just there's too much that didn't make sense. So I had this thought all the time that, he's got something on. What's what did he do? Did he catch the guy in bed with 5 horses? I don't know.
I get you, though. Like, you're like, what is keeping him loyal? I get you.
Yeah. So I can't answer your question. I can't even get close.
Defining peace in practical terms, how do you translate peace from an abstract ideal into concrete, achievable actions?
And I feel that the best answer is the simplest answer, and that is peace has changed. It's no longer the place between wars like we talked before, but that it is a feeling. And it's a feeling that you get while you are caring. And it's for the people, by the people, of the people, while you are caring. It's for the patients, with the patients, of the patients, while you are caring. That's the new definition of peace, in my opinion.
What are the biggest challenges in your work, and what strategies do you use to maintain hope and resilience?
Strategies are just don't make the same mistakes I've made before.
Document.
There's so many new mistakes made.
Yeah.
That, hey, was it a mistake that I went to Myanmar? Sure. I took, 10 years of my life to do a wonderful thing that absolutely worked, and then a rug was pulled out from underneath me. Was that a mistake? Sure.
I think that's just the risk of international work.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and I could write a book afterwards. And the book is probably pretty much proof that Oscar Wilde was correct, that all art is useless. So, and my book included.
Can you talk about the book a little bit, just what's in it?
It's really looking at what it means to care for peace. And it defines what care for peace is. It defines what the first, second, and the sustained human evolutions are. It defines that a government should strive to be as good as the best person it hopes to represent. I better say that again, because that's in the book, and I really believe in it. A government must strive to be as good as the best person it hopes to represent. And I call that the best person rule in the book, and I describe it. And in the book, I also have 4 templates, and the 4 templates, I don't know, do you post this in video or?
No, it's a video, but you can say it out loud.
Well, there you go. I have 4 templates. Those are 4, and then the other 2.
Tell them what you're holding up to the screen.
And these are very simple formats to discuss where we're at personally, where are we at from a relational standpoint, and where we're at from a cultural standpoint, and where we're at from an organizational standpoint. An organizational, which includes business and government, and nonprofit and religious. It's organization. So from a personal standpoint, it's what does it mean to care for peace? And so on my personal, if I can, I'm not gonna read every single one of these because you don't have time, and I think I could bore everybody at once. But I've categorized on each on each template three categories, which is for myself and for other people, and then for the global environment. Because what I have for myself, my prime directive, and yeah, you can remember Star Trek when I'm using that word, because prime directive is a very important concept that was established.
To not interfere with evolution, right?
Absolutely. Not interfere with whatever the culture is that you're going into. So the first thing I have to do is, okay, what's my prime directive? And for me, it's to care with my heart and with my hands. That's my value. My attitude is to do no harm and to do and say good things. So that, once again, that's, you bring that to the meditative moment. It's my predisposition to act. That's what an attitude is. And then my goal is peace with myself. That's it. That's me. And then when it comes to my relationships with other people, my value is to care about and for all living things. The attitude is to help relieve the pain and suffering of others. That's my hands, my hand. It's that point where here's what I'm going to do. If someone's suffering, I'm going to help them. That's the attitude. It's a predisposition. And then the goal is peace with humanity. This is not rocket science, folks. This isn't even pea shooter science.
I think it still says a lot that we need this, though,
Yeah. So, and then finally, and this is the only template I'm reading out loud, because as I say, we don't have time and no one has the last one is when it comes to my prime directive, when it comes to the global environment, my value is to care for the global environment. My attitude is to protect the balance of nature, and the goal is peace with the earth.
Nice.
And then the other templates are really trying to put it into context of, okay, during this first human evolution, what was it, or what still is it? If we might still be in the first human evolution. What was, or what is it? And then what can we do during the suspended human evolution so that we can plan the second human evolution? And so in context of the first and second human evolution, we got to look at what it was. It was, we're going to have hegemony of everything. We're going to conquer everybody. Or in the second human evolution, we've got to have much more diversity. And so, we've got to look at, that's two generalized terms. And that's really a basis for the discussion. We've got to look at what was and what should be, because we have not in any way started designing the second human evolution yet. Even though my kudos big time to the World Health Organization, to the United Nations, and to Bill and Melinda Gates, and everybody who's out there trying to help with this, but it's not a global process yet. We have not gotten to the morning prayer that we say to one nation,
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Exactly. We haven't gotten there yet. So
that's
how do we do it?
It's almost like it was something to aspire to that the founding fathers made.
Exactly. And that's what my book is about. It's how do we get to the how? How do we get to the how? What's the template? What are we going to use for this discussion? And so I say right in the beginning of the template, it's up to you guys to tear it apart and to put it into your own words, because this is just me. This is just what I think. This
how
is
you
not
interpret it is up to you.
And and especially for you, Joseph, I will get the book to you if you haven't had a chance to read it already. I'll get it to you so that as you're thinking about all this stuff we've been talking about, you will start to realize, if you haven't already in this conversation, how important you are to get this discussion going in your own words.
You know what's funny is I can't even remember if you reached out to me or if I reached out. I don't remember. It's funny, but it doesn't even matter though, because it's like so on brand of what I'm trying to cover for my topics. That's why it's funny.
Well, I reach out to people I think are global podcasts. So if you had something in your matchmaker, or there's another one I use, then it was me.
Yeah.
I reached out to you because
That's
I'm
awesome.
glad I got you. You're exactly what I was reaching out for, because I don't know what my next step is. Well, I am writing another book, but it's really more of the same from the first book. And it's more of the how. It's taking the first book and saying, okay, here's what we got to do. But do I want to do a speaker stump again? Because I spoke for 50 years in the healthcare arena. I love standing on the stage.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
What I would love to learn about is how you brought these projects into fruition. So, I mean, if you could make a book on, how do you groundwork and build the community to get a whole center going, I think that'd be pretty useful, whether it's in America or not,
Thank you for the suggestion. I will take it into consideration.
Because I would love to know, like, if I could pick your brain, I'd be like, how do I do that here? That's what I would be thinking. Obviously, regulations and laws are different, and bureaucracy takes forever in America.
And I don't know if there's okay. So thank you for the suggestion. And here's how I will consider it. I've been going in a direction away from my original healthcare related focus, because we aren't talking about building hospitals and designing facilities and healthcare cities, which I got involved in at one point. We're talking about global stuff here, and I'm really toying with the idea of getting back on the stage, which is lecture circuit. But I'm really interested in high school kids and college kids. I'm interested in talking to the next generation, because they're the ones who are already listening to you, who are already on the social network platform. So I want to get to the people who are the influencers, the social network platform. But I'm not an influencer. I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to be on TikTok. I don't even have a podcast. Okay. I don't, actually I do, because I'm going to be loading up some of my favorite podcasts, including the one that you developed here, because this is perfect for my podcast of podcasts. Okay. So, I don't know, but that's really the direction I'm going. I want to get on that lecture circuit, but to get there, I've got to be at least recognizable, and that's why I'm thinking that going to high schools and going to college for free is really the way I need to go. The next step. The next step is very important in life. If we go too far, if we have our heads too far in the blue, we'll be blamed the way Kamala's being blamed.
And I feel like it's not a hard thing if you just kind of research the school districts more open to it, because in Texas it's like so hard. I've tried to do that, and it's like, if you're not already within the they're weary of alternative education if it's not already within their curriculum. But I'm sure that's not the case everywhere,
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends in Texas. I actually had an office in Texas.
Oh, wow.
My
What
company,
city?
In Dallas.
Wow.
Yeah, we were designing and building hospitals all over in Austin. Yeah, I mean, I helped to build I guess it's called the Seton Hospital now. I don't know.
Wow.
It's in Austin, man.
Yeah.
I got a lot of friends in Texas. I'll tell you, the doctor friends of mine, and I'll tell you, if I want ribs, I go to, what is it?
Terry Black's or something?
No, it's called St. Ives. They're the best ribs in town. and
Wow.
the county line. Oh my God! I mean, I don't know how many county lines you guys have,
A
but
lot.
you have it's just great. I just love the food. And it might go without saying, but Texas has some of the most beautiful women on the planet. So I thought it, Waikiki, Hawaii was where the most beautiful women were until I got to Dallas. Like, hands off, and hands off. I'm married, so
That's good. Yeah, I'm pretty diehard Texan. I'll say that. Like, wouldn't mind dying in my state. So
good.
I love it here.
We need people like you. We need it. It is great. I love Texas. Great people. Just salt of the earth.
And that's not to say I haven't been anywhere, because I honestly love New York too, as well. Like, I love how many people can coexist in one place. It blows my mind. Peacefully too.
Good. Amen.
Balancing individual needs with collective peace. How can we reconcile individual ambitions with the need for collective peace and sustainability?
God, I love this. People asking. I get questions, and I say, that's no fair. I don't get to think about the answer. I gotta open my big mouth on this and hope that what comes out of my mouth is going to sound even noticeably.
Improvise some magic.
Yeah. The key word here is reconciled, because it automatically means that you're not connected, that they're not connected. And all right, I think that we're doing it. I think that you're doing it. I think this is exactly what we do. Talk a lot.
That's
and
a good
when
answer.
People say, well, what do you mean by the pre-planning process that I'm espousing? Well, most of my planning work was getting hospital committees in the right mind to be able to design something together, because you don't all of a sudden get a bunch of different people, and a doctor and a nurse and a radiology tech and a doc and
to agree is it's so hard.
And you don't bring them all to the first meeting and say, okay, we're going to call the architects, because the minute the architects come, he's in charge and you're in trouble, because the architect is going to look to the first doctor he sees and says, what do you want? Well, I want a radiology department that is standalone and has its own corridors. And this is an exact example of what I fell into one time. And I mean, I got fired from this project for a while they straightened the doctor out. And I came back in. So it's like I didn't get a chance to prepare them, as in, let's all go out together and look at other hospitals and agree that what we see is what we all see together. That's job one. So as a facilitator, my number one job in planning, and number two job and number three planning, is a pre-planning process. It's before you even pick up the pen, and definitely before you call the architect. Because if you call the architect, you're in trouble, because they are good. And this is not a negative comment about the architects. They know their stuff. And I've had a lot of friends. I've had a lot of projects with architects, good people. But boy, do they know how to work with a team of people who don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is you end up getting a hospital that is beautiful, but it's not functional.
See, and you're talking about facilitation, and my problem is I'll get people on the phone way too early, like the decision makers, like you're saying, and they're like, all right, where are we building this? And I'm like, oh, haven't even got that figured out yet.
Right.
Like, I'll get people to commit and be super interested in the projects, but I get too ahead of myself.
Right. Well, what happened to me was I ended up I was very popular with Columbia HCA with 192 hospitals, and the guy who ended up being in charge of HCA had been in charge of Health Trust, which was a smaller hospital corporation, and he had used me to teach the architect and work with the architect in designing a model hospital in Mayfield, Kentucky, which worked out really well, and we designed it to be functionally more effective before they got the beauty put in. And the Mayfield, Kentucky Community Hospital is called something else now, but it's still standing and doing a good job. So that CEO became the CEO, the chairman of the board of Columbia HCA. So all of a sudden, my star was way the heck up there. So they started calling me before they called the architect. So my job was just smoothed out completely. I mean, I'd go to a meeting with all their division heads. I went to one meeting with all of Columbia HCA's division heads. That's 5 guys to talk about what hospitals should look like. And so I got there with a whiteboard, and instead of writing that you want your hospital to be patient focused, I wrote that your hospitals should be nursing focused. It was like, they were, what? You gotta be kidding. You gotta be kidding.
Wow.
What are you talking about? And by the end of the meeting, they were right there, because the nurses are the ones that are in the hospital all the time. And the caregivers too, not just the nurses, but
Wow.
the clerks who run the departments, and the caregivers, the techs who are there all the time, because the doctors are not there all the time. And if they are like radiologists, they're in their offices looking at computer screens. They're not doing the leg running stuff. It's like, and they're not hearing all the problems from the patients who come in and say, oh my God, you're asking me my name again? They asked my name at the front desk when I walked into the hospital. Then they sent me to another place and they asked my name again. And then that was the registration department. And then they sent me to radiology, and here you are asking my name again.
Wow.
Well, I decided to design. No. We designed a hospital where you only have to ask the patient his name once. That's it. Oh my God, how do we do that? And we get the people thinking about how to do that. But you start by taking them all on a tour of other hospitals.
And getting them out of their comfort zone, apparently.
Well, actually into a comfort zone. Yes, out of one kind of a comfort zone and into another kind. And this is the kind where, wow, you guys, we're here together. We are now ready. Well, we've solved some of the issues. The big one. We are not going to have a long patient corridor that looks like a hotel that has patient rooms down each side. No, we're going to have a cluster of patient rooms around a central desk where the nurses are sitting looking at each other, and people and visitors and doctors can sit and look at each other, and there'll be glass windows behind this desk where the patients are. And if I'm a nurse sitting across you, nurse, and there's a patient behind you that I can see through the window behind you who's pulling out a trach, I'll say, excuse me, but your patient is pulling out his trach. You don't have to walk down the corridor because some monitor nurse said, hey, it looks like a patient might be pulling out. Oh, yeah, I see that it looks like on the EKG that it's kind of going blip, blip, blip. You don't have to do that. You can just see it right over there. Now, five paces later, that nurse you were talking to across from you, whose patient was pulling a trach out behind you, 5 paces and you can deal with the problem. No walking around long corridors. So we would come to that decision before we call the architect. I got a great design for you. Excuse me, but those are corridors that you're showing us. We don't want corridors.
Wow. You're making me wonder how many other industries are like this, in the sense of they don't accommodate the people that are there all the time. Like, they're thinking of everything else but the people that they should help. Oh man. I wanted an answer, so I'm glad I got that.
Sorry. Apologies. But yeah, I mean, fire departments know how to take care of their firemen, man. They got big kitchens so that they can practice their cooking for the fireman's cookbook.
I love it. That's a good example too.
No, there's a lot of places. I've seen some town halls that I think have done really well, and planning commissions that have done really well. Planning commissions that have screening at the reception desk, so that the people who walk in with blueprints can say, well, here's what I'm here for, and they can roll out the blueprint. And the person behind the registration desk would say, well, okay, you need to talk to so-and-so who's right here in the next room. follow me. I mean, I've seen some really good stuff with that. So,
it's pretty cool to know you can make a career out of facilitation too, because I mean that's pretty much what I do all day. So I didn't know you could just be a dot connector, you know?
Yeah, dot connector. Ooh, yeah, but the first job of facilitator is the dot maker. Huh?
You got to draw from a point, right? You have to start from somewhere. That's a good point.
Yeah, you got to, because when I came in to these hospitals that already had the dots, it was too late.
Ooh.
And I'd have arguments, and I was invited to a local hospital to help because the administrator was a friend of mine, and I just had to say, you know, you've got the architect already, and you got a whole team of people with binders. Oh my God, they bring their binders around and say, okay, well, these binders are going to show you how many patients need to be on the med-surg floor. And here's how many patients that you're going to have.
Super tedious.
On the, it's just, you know, and I'm going, wait a minute, you guys don't even
user-friendly for anybody.
it is.
Wow.
Anyway.
Human nature and patterns of conflict. In your view, what aspects of human nature make achieving peace difficult, and how can we work through these?
Well, it's the first human evolution that gets in the way. Everything from the first human evolution. I mean, it's our native thoughts, feelings, reactions, what's in our sensorium, 250 million years ago when we were, just fighting to survive in the swamps. Well, that was even before. That was long before 250 million. Okay, so but at 250 million, when we were sticking sticks down holes and, eating the ants off the stick, from that point on into the tribal nature, into our, it's just, we were, kill or be killed. We were,
that's a good point. We're still in a defensive kind of mode, I guess.
Yes, we are. And it's still survival of the fittest, where, it's still survival of the fittest. And we elect people, or we allow dictators to take over. And so we don't have the best person rule yet, because the best person rule is a second human evolution rule. It's like, okay, who is the best person? How can we strive to have the best person we hope to represent us? Well, that assumes that we have an idea of what the best person is. And man, you got lots of best persons out there. You got Jesus, you got Martin Luther King, you got Buddha, but you also have some really good best people who, from a personal standpoint, you've got Obama, and you got his wife, and you've got Bill and Melinda Gates. I mean, there's and you got people who know in your own backyard. You got people who are best persons. And me, I'm a best person. I want somebody who I can look up to, because they are not just better than me, but they're the best person. Forget better. I wouldn't know how to operate or manage or govern a country, much less govern.
Tell that to the DEI standards, though.
Yeah. That and standards, again, that's a silo. That's
a good point.
You have to be beyond silos. You have to think about what's the best.
In general, I like that. Defining legacy. What kind of legacy do you hope Care for Peace will leave for future generations?
Well, I mean, if Care for Peace continues, it'll be absorbed or even absconded. I don't care. It's like any experimental thought or experimental program. It gets absorbed into the mainstream, into the main thought process. I started a experimental college at Sacramento State College with Otto Butts, who ended up becoming the president. He was the president of Sacramento State College at the time. That's what it was called. Now it's a University of California, or California University of, or something. And then he became the head of the Golden Gate University in San Francisco. An unbelievable, wonderful man. And I actually worked with him to start the experimental college on his watch. And we started a Black Studies program. We had a whole bunch of different studies that were experimental studies. They were absorbed by the curriculum.
Wow.
So we didn't need to have an experimental college. In about 3 years, it was absorbed.
And then you can use that as reference for your work in the future, no? Like it's been
absolutely
implemented. See, I don't see why you couldn't do your speaking circuit anyway now.
Thank you for that. And when I was doing speaking in healthcare, it was about ideas that needed to be influenced. One was no hidden patient, and that was the idea of a nursing unit that was not where nurses had to walk down long corridors to get to their patients that were in hidden rooms. So I didn't want a hidden patient, so no hidden patient.
That's interesting.
Then I had the idea, actually long before that, which was called patient administration. It's where you had a block in a hospital that is where all your clerks live, your admission registration clerks, but they were also exactly the same people who did the registration for radiology, laboratory, pharmacy, emergency department. Okay? So you don't have patients going to different departments saying their same name. So I'm used to getting up on a stage and spouting these new ideas and getting people to get up on the stage with me, panels to discuss the issues so that people in the audience could see the options being discussed. It's like what you and I were talking earlier about how to work with people who have preconceived notions and how we deal with our own preconceived notion and how to bring them into the discussion, because you throw the issue out there and I'm saying, what if? Mm-hmm. What if we have one department that serves all the departments so that patients get served by one person? Oh, you need to go to radiology. Follow me.
Wow.
It's just real simple.
That's interesting.
So the legacy, if there is one, it will involve transmogrification. I think that's a Calvin and Hobbes word.
I've never heard it.
It needs to be morphed into whatever it needs to be morphed in so that it isn't mine anymore, and so that no one is referencing my book or, Jeffrey Charles.
And the funny part is if you were actually selfish, I'm sure you could take that design and be making money on it in some way,
Oh, I didn't tell you. You're supposed to send me $1 million. You know what? I've got enough money. I'm doing fine. I live in the smallest house on our block, I think. My wife and I, we put some money away. We're doing okay. I don't need any more money. I got my grandkids living with me. That's wonderful.
That's
I got
awesome.
One son of two sons living with me. I love it. But if I was filthy rich, I'd be living alone with my wife, which I would absolutely love. I love my wife, especially when I go on a vacation with my wife. We have a great time. But no, I like living with my family. It's great. I'm doing great. So.
I would argue that splitting up families and buying homes was almost like a psychological operation to divide people.
Oh, absolutely.
We should all be living together and cohesively, for sure.
Yes.
Not just a resource thing, but for our own health benefit.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I remember telling some Vietnamese people that I was hired to help design a hospital in Hanoi, and I was on the third floor of this huge tower that was owned by the people who hired me. And it was their offices, and they were in charge of all sorts of stuff for the communist government. And they asked me, so what's your home life? And I said, we've got something really weird. I'm living with my wife. I've got a son. I've got granddaughters living with me, and they're sitting there laughing their heads off because the top 2 floors of this building had all their family, which included the grandparents, the mothers, the uncles, the aunts, the children, you name it. They had their own pace. daycare center. It was like, they were laughing at me. And then when I went to Myanmar, it was the same thing. Nigeria, it was the same thing. Everybody, all these countries that where they have the non-nuclear family, they have the extended family. No, it's the intended family.
Wow.
That's what they have. So
what a horrible
wonderful
name, right? The name in itself makes it sound like that's funny.
Hey, yesterday after our conversation, my daughter-in-law came in with our brand new 2 months old baby girl named Sue and handed her to me. So I had to put her right here, and I put a one of the browsers over on the other screen because I got 4 screens. I put it on, and I put babies dancing on the screen, and I turned toward the screen so that Sue could watch the screen while I was working on the other screen. Yeah, that's awesome. Great stuff.
Hopefully she remembers that. Totally kidding.
No, don't kid about that, because the memory that we are building for our children is the one that's part of their caring memory, and that's where they're going to remember it. It's going to be right there in their heart.
That they were nurtured, and then they just do it for others. They won't remember
me. What's my legacy for the 2 grandchildren that I have who are 11 and 14? I'll tell you what my legacy is. They don't remember me raising and holding them and changing their diapers and loving them and playing with them when they're little. They have a memory of love in their hearts, a memory of safety, security that I can see. Every time I see them. These are not 2 teenage girls. These are 2 wonderful young adults who have not rebelled at all. You know why? Because my legacy is in their hearts. So, same answer to your question about the legacy of Care for Peace. Hell, nobody's going to remember me. That's fine.
I think that really goes to show like our misconception of what an impact really is, right? Like if it's not a tangible thing we can see, we assume there's no point, or it might not make a difference.
Right. And look at Martin Luther King. But what legacy has he left? Well, he's left some really important statements that resonate. The arc of justice. What a wonderful thing to say. Now, it turns out he's not the one who actually came up with that statement. Somebody else did, but we remember Martin Luther King as has said that. But that's a perfect example of how something that is really important is going to go from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. Look at that. What was it? The one that don't ask what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you. Or no, it's the other way around. That was something that Roosevelt said. That wasn't a Kennedy statement. That was a Roosevelt statement. There's a whole pile of statements that you can follow back generations and generations that go back far, and Joseph Campbell, in several of his wonderful books, The Hero's Journey and a few of the other ones that he did in the PBS series, he'll talk about the Bible as being a collection of things that came long before, and how the story of Moses and the story of the swamp and the baby in the bassinet, that came from Egypt. There's a whole bunch of wonderful legacy statements, legacy stories that have come forward in our lives. So Care for Peace that I came up with isn't something that I came up with. It's something that I realized. And then I met the nurses, and they all realized it. So all I'm doing is passing it forward. That's all I'm doing. So the legacy of Care for Peace will go forward, regardless of whether my name is connected or not.
You know what kind of amazes me too is that the more that time goes on, the more compelling those speeches become.
Like what? What are you thinking about?
Just like his most iconic speech, it's like to think somebody was realizing this at such an early point in history, or maybe things still haven't changed since then. It's really eye-opening for like the next generation to know that, you know?
You're thinking about Martin Luther?
Yeah, and the other thing is how young that they start to teach us this. I don't really agree with that. I think we're not really old enough in our earliest stage in high school to really comprehend its like impact and its importance to society, the world. But if we got to like our senior year, or like we're starting college, and then it becomes like, you know, more pertinent as a topic to discuss. We haven't really had a worldview established at that point, I feel.
And I would only add that Martin Luther King was number 7 in the rule of 7. Remember the rule of 7, where it's a 7th person? I gave an example of where he got something from a previous statement, but it was at the right time. And other people have said the things that he's saying. It's just that it took Martin Luther King to pull it together. If you want to watch a fabulous series, look at the series that I think PBS put together it was a 3 or 4 part series on Einstein, and all of the synthesis that he pulled from other great scientists.
Good point.
To put into the context that he got.
That's the whole standing on the shoulders quote, right?
I'm not so sure that it was standing on the shoulder. He was a synthesizer. He synthesized. He brought it all together, you know, and that's what Moog did when Moog made his synthesizer. Moog was not a computer scientist. He was a computer user. He figured out how to put all these little pieces together to make music. And his first synthesizer was a whole bunch of tapes, you know, tape recorder tapes that were playing back a note from an organ or a note from a cow. It didn't matter.
Interesting. That's funny. That's funny you know that, by the way.
Yeah, fun stuff. Anyway,
I'm just like, now I'm curious about your history with music for a second. I'm like, how do you know that?
Well, I got my own synthesizer. I've got a Novation synthesizer in my recording studio. I have
recording studio. My mind is blown.
yeah, and I use what is the name of the computer program I have?
Like Logic or GarageBand or
no, this is
Pro Tools.
A starts with the letter A.
Ableton.
Ableton, yes. So I've got Ableton working with Novation, because Novation is a smart keyboard that has those little pads and lights and everything, you know. But Ableton has a whole pile of pre-synthesized sounds, so you can bring them in, and you can not just the sounds, but whole. Like if you want to do a church organ, you can put it on church organ, and everything you play on Novation sounds as if you're on a church organ. If you push tabla, then you use a couple of T's, and all of a sudden you're playing an East Indian tabla. So
I love it. You just had found this unhidden talent of yours I didn't know about.
I write songs. I love writing songs. Well, the Care for Peace song is on YouTube, and so if I
need to link that. Well, I'm going to link that in the bio after this.
It's
for sure.
Absolutely an awesome song, and it's not because I wrote it and sung it on my ukulele.
It's the purpose.
It's that I took it and I went to a bunch of girls and who were part of what were they called? It was an a cappella choir of 20 girls at our local high school, and I sang it once to them and gave them the music that I had written on pieces of paper, and I said, okay, sing it with me. And so they sang it with me. I left. 3 weeks later, they had hired an arranger, and their teacher was phenomenal, and they had put this song together to what it is now on a YouTube video that is beyond awesome. I wrote it, but man, they crafted it.
Did you distribute it as well? Like, is it in stores or anything?
Oh God, no. I don't. I
was like,
but
you should, because then, I mean, if anything goes to it, you can even donate the proceeds to them or something.
Well, I wrote a lot of other songs. So I've written songs, I've recorded them in my studio. And if you're really a sucker for punishment, you can go to papahardy.com and listen, because papahardy.com has a bunch of other songs that I have written for me and for my friends. And and frankly, for people that I respect. I wrote one for Picasso because I respect Picasso, so I wrote a song called Guess What, Guernica. And I wrote a song for Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote many books. He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And so I wrote a song for him based on his book, The First Circle, which, a phenomenal book. So,
paying homage.
Exactly. And I've written, and it's a bunch of songs that I've written really for other people. I wrote a song for Huey Lewis because I met him once, at a children's
That's so
party.
interesting. People don't do that. People never do that.
Well, I have
with
to write for
music.
somebody.
I think we just usually make music for other artists or with artists, but we don't really pay an ode to like other professions. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, and I'm not Taylor Swift. Yeah, I mean, I love her music. I mean, I listen to it. It's just, it blows me out what she
early
has done.
Taylor. I prefer early Taylor.
Oh yeah, but I like what's that song that I just played yesterday again for the 500th time? It's the blank something blank. It's a blank line, or it's a no. Anyway.
Or know it. Know it.
It's a recent song, and it's just, the gal she really has her finger on the pulse. So,
for real.
But no, the reason why I write is I don't want to write a song that's just a love song, So I wrote a song for my wife that was, I was thinking about my wife while I was writing it, and I can't say, well, I'm going to write the lyrics and then I'm going to write the music. No, I have to it's got to be, I got to write the whole thing. It's got to be not writing a song. I've got to create the whole song. But the problem with using the word create is that what I end up with is not the ultimate creation. And the best example is what those girls did with my Care for Peace song.
Yeah. You're bringing like a rough draft in a sense, right?
It's not even a demo tape. It's
I got you.
But I like that very rough draft. That's what it is.
Yeah, you're exposing yourself to the criticism, so I get you. You're like, look, this isn't perfect. Just tell me what you think.
That's right. Yeah. And if anybody wants to listen, and I've had people listen to my videos, and the most wonderful thing someone has said was, keep your day job.
To be fair, though, all musicians do this, where we're like, it's not done, or it's not the way it is. So everybody's like that. It's just, we don't put too much value on the art, as horrible as that sounds. And we don't believe in it the way we should either.
Right. That's, we got a long way to go. And that's the beauty. The journey is not as much the reward as all the little points along the journey that are the rewards. We just got back from Puerto Vallarta for 10 days. We had a wonderful time, and someone asked me, oh, was that on your bucket list? And I said, no, that was my bucket list, because that vacation was a point on the journey. I will have many points. I have had many points on the journey. The journey itself is not the reward. It's all those little points that you have on the journey that you can say, yeah, I planned that. That was wonderful. I didn't plan all of that. It was wonderful, So I love Buddhist interpretation of that expression, but I interpret that interpretation in a different way. The same way I interpret, was it Tolstoy who said no, it's not that one. It was a Plato. Well, not the what is there was a quote that, it was Socrates who said, his famous quote, do you want to live or do you want to die? And he said that, is it
the give me liberty, give me death quote?
No, it's when Socrates said, the unexplained life is not worth living. And that's not in my opinion, that doesn't interpret whatever the original term was, because I can only hear the interpretation that someone said that the unexplained life is not worth living. What I say is
unexamined. There you go.
Unexamined life, exactly. And I'm saying, wait a minute. He was talking about the need to have conversations with people,
to go within
that process of discussion, the way Plato and Ion had a discussion in the Republic of, that dramatic irony process unfolding in front of you. And that's why it's not the unexplained life. It's the ability to constantly explain and dialogue, because they gave him an opportunity to live in exile, and he did not want to live in exile. He'd rather die than live in exile. That's what he meant.
It's making me think that they were so conscious of like their long-term actions of what could come from their decisions, right? Like they're saying we need to look at everything. We need to make the best decisions, look at ourselves, go within ourselves. I think that's what you mean by examined life, right? Like they're constantly looking at their decisions in themselves.
Yes. And what he was complaining about was he had a circle around him. If you ever see the pictures that people have described, that they have painted or scribbled of Socrates, even on his deathbed when he's sitting there with a bowl of hemlock, there's always a bunch of people around him. Every single one has a bunch of people around him. He did not want to live without a bunch of people around him that he could have that conversation with. Wow. So it's your comment and his purpose in life. His purpose was to continue that discussion, and he could not do it, which I feel bad for him that he couldn't, go to solitary confinement and have a conversation among himself. But that's what happened. It made a great story, and so we're still telling it.
A little bit more of a fan of Aristotle, just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Personal evolution alongside your mission. How has your personal philosophy or understanding of peace evolved alongside your career?
Well, I think that my life speaks the answer. And
what it's turned into.
Yeah, and what it's had at every single point of the joint journey. So the point where I got married to my wonderful woman who is my wife today, and the point when I went on my first honeymoon with my wife, which was a wonderful point in that journey that had that rewarding point, and then the other major rewarding points I had when I had a child, and then another one when I had another child. I have had so many rewards, and those rewards were all because I care for my peace, and I have cared for the peace of others.
Do you have any unique story on how you met your wife?
Well, I mean, I heard her laughing in a hospital, and I said, "Where did that laugh come from?" And I left my office as the medical records director of a very small 100-bed hospital, and I walked around the corridor, and I heard it again, and I kept walking, and I turned the corner into a room, and here it was, this absolutely cute girl with long hair down to her ankles, laughing. That was how I met her.
You were like, "That's the one."
That's the one.
I love it. That's funny. I would take that as another lesson of you following your gut.
Well, I guess, but it's really following my heart.
Intuition, heart, all that.
Yeah, it's really, combination. Gut, heart, intuition, spiritual, hell, spell, soul. Excuse me.
I love it. Those kind of stories are like non-existent now, so I needed to get that one.
Ha ha.
Encouraging community ownership. How can communities take ownership of their own peace and healthcare solutions?
I think if you look at some of the leaders we have in communities, and I look at my own community when I'm answering this question, we've had some really good mayors and really good supervisors of my county. And Susan Adams was the head supervisor, and she became a very dear friend of ours. She's now working as a nurse for the University of California, Davis. I don't know. I've lost track of her, but what a wonderful person. And we have had wonderful supervisors, and the mayor that we have of our little tiny town here has done a wonderful job. And the people that are working with them, I think that all people have to do is look at the leaders that they've got and look at the ones that are working. And as in, their words are getting out. They're touching the people in their community. They're listening to the people in the community. They're giving cool things to their community. My mayor in my community has put on all sorts of wonderful neighborhood rock and roll shows. Who ever heard of such a thing? Thursday night we'll go down to the main street and they'll cordon off a little later an area, and they'll get some cover band that sings all the songs that everybody already knows to sing, so that the people in the neighborhood were all down there dancing away. I mean, what a wonderful thing.
That is
they're also
cool.
fixing the streets so that we're not driving all over potholes all the time. So they're doing a great job. So honor thy community, and our community leaders.
Yeah, I would argue that's also where it starts. Like it's not at the top where everybody thinks. People getting emotional about the election when the most impact they could really have, like you're saying, is in your community.
Amen. Totally agree.
Love it. Hope in the next generation. What signs do you see in the world that give you hope for a more peaceful, connected future?
My own kids, my own grandkids. I'm just watching how they're taking all this in, and I have great hope for them. And they are doing a great job of, I won't say criticizing, but observing and understanding what's going on, so that they know enough to be able to stand back and look at it, not get totally involved in it. That they aren't the kids who are going to go out and do something harmful for themselves or others, or even take something too seriously for themselves or for others. They're looking at it, taking it with a grain of salt. It's because social media is a real contention, a real problem that we have. And by the way, it's not just social media for the kids, it's television for the adults. I mean, television for the adults is a problem too. I mean, we're sitting there blaming social media, and yet the amount of screen time the adults are spending is equal to what their kids are playing in the other room.
That took a lot of self-awareness to say that one. What would you say to those who are skeptical about humanity's capacity to achieve lasting peace?
Well, I'd say keep your skepticism. Keep that's fine.
Because you've seen it. You've seen it. You know the potential.
Yeah. I know what it's there. Skepticism is what we are blessed with if we've stubbed our toes a few times and we see another hill that we might stub our toe in. And keep walking, keep moving. That's what I say to them.
Earlier, we talked about how, it's probably because they aren't involved. So maybe that could be another answer for that solution.
I like that.
Over personal patterns for resilience, a couple more questions. What personal habits or mindsets have helped you maintain focus on your mission, even in tough times?
Sense of humor.
Wow. That one should have been obvious, I guess.
Well, no. I mean, and let's look at the concept of sense of humor. I'm talking about something that's part of your sensorium, okay? This is part of hearing and tasting and smelling and seeing and touching.
That's a good point. Never heard that.
it's a sense. Have the ability to see, hear, understand irony. Irony is a wonderful word. We have to understand dramatic irony and invective.
Satire.
Satire, yes, especially if you're going to be watching Comedy of Errors with Shakespeare. You better understand the irony of the sets of twins hiring the sets of twins, and then the big switcheroo that goes during the entire play, and realize that the joke's on you. It's not just the joke's on them.
Crazy.
And that's a sense. That's a sense. You have to say, oh,
you also made me realize how old it is, though. You said Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Like, as humanity, you would think we would have already evolved to that intellectual, everyone knows sarcasm. But I think that also goes to show we're trying to say being more sensible, seeing the humor in everything, not being offended. It's kind of where you're going.
Sensible. I heard you say sensible. What does sensible mean? We back up. Able of sensing. I think if there's one thing I would say to people who want to enjoy this process that's the solution to the humoristic view of life and what we're going to do about our collective life to get into the second human evolution, is back up every moment. And It's like where we were talking about that split seconds before you make a decision, the split second before you talk. It's that split second before you say anything, because we have to back up. And when we back up, we'll be able to enjoy what it is that we are doing much better, and enjoy this conversation we're having right now. Joseph, again, I go back to you. This is where your sensibility, your ability to take all this stuff into your sensorium and use it to help other people get rid of their...
Disseminate, I think, is the word, right?
Disseminate and articulate.
Yep. Yeah, because just because you can put it out there, it doesn't mean everyone can understand it. So that's a good point. Making it digestible is a good idea.
There you
Super
go.
Well said. Damn. Okay, personal patterns for resilience. What personal habits or mindsets have helped you maintain focus? Oh, wait, did I just say that one? Personal patterns?
I think we talked about resilience.
This is the last question right here. And then we'll get into anything you want to promote. So here we go. Contributing to the second evolution. If listeners remember one thing from this conversation, what would you want it to be, and how can it guide them toward making an impact?
Okay. I think the answer to the question is also my final statement of this podcast. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the first sentence that is in the preview, not the preface, but the preview in my book. And the first sentence is this: to care for peace may not be the secret of life, but it's as close to the secret of living there is. I'm going to repeat that. To care for peace may not be the secret of life, but it's as close to the secret of living there is.
Pretty powerful. I like it.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Well, I mean, anything you want to promote, like your books, your website, how to find you, if anyone wants to hire you.
Nah.
Nothing.
I'll tell you what I want to promote. I want to promote you, Joseph, because what you're doing now, a lot of podcasts I've been have already gone defunct.
Wow.
And what you are a global podcast. If you weren't before, you are now, because I hereby dub thee a extremely important element of this global podcaster realm, which is a very small group. Believe me, I had to wade through hundreds of podcast titles, cooking titles, LGBT titles, how to tie your shoes. You would not believe how many podcasts are out there. And I also reached out to NPR outlets. I've reached out to lots of pundits, including Oprah, Bill Maher, you name it. To a lot of these people, I don't hear back from any of them, okay? Which is probably because of how I reached out, or that they've got their minions saying, oh my God, I got 250,000 more. What am I going to do? These emails. I think today I'm going to eliminate all of them. So, it's okay. But I'm looking at what you're doing as something that needs to continue, and you need to take this ball and run with it. Put it into your words, into your own. I already know you already have the words. This is not my ideas. These are already in your ideas. That's why we've had such a perfect conversation. Because everything I say, you say, oh, yeah, I know. And then you throw in something that is absolutely, most of the time better than what I say. It's just more clear.
I wouldn't say that, but I appreciate it.
It's a clarification. You've clarified both by saying something either clearer or clarified because it's a match, but it's saying it in a different way. Thank you. So I'm going to pitch you. That's what I want to say. My last words, Joseph, please keep doing what you're doing.
Damn, that means a lot to me. And I'm still going to put all your links in the bio. So if anyone wants to learn more, just check out the description below. Jeffrey, it's been an honor. I learned so much today, and hopefully we can make an impact around the world.
Thank you. Now, I think you should give anybody who watches this to the end some kind of a award. Tell them you'll send them $10 or something. Because we have actually talked for about 2.5 hours. I don't know how long. So if anybody actually watches this to the end, I think they get major kudos.
Yeah, this is probably going to be my longest podcast for sure.
Yeah, maybe let's give them a sleeping pill. Because
we just woke him up though.
Maybe we did. We'll see. Joseph, thanks a million.
I appreciate it, Jeff. I'll let you know when this is out. More Than Rich podcast. We are out.